All right, let's get started. Welcome. My name is Brian Smith. I'm head of partnerships at Unified, the social network for activism, and I'm your moderator for tonight's forum with candidates for District 9 in the Austin City Council. Again, I want to thank you so much for being here. The title of tonight's event is Building an Abundant Austin. Our focus is on housing and transportation and the viewpoints of these candidates, what they want to bring to the Austin City Council should they be elected. But before we go any further, I want to give a chance to have our host at ARA, the Austin Urbanist Association, say a few words, and my good friend, Alam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alam Barani. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. We're delighted to have you here. On behalf of AURA, I want to welcome everyone here. AURA is delighted to host tonight's event. AURA is a grassroots urbanist organization that focuses on abundant housing, on affordable housing, on public transportation, and safe streets. And we're really happy that this could come together, and we hope you enjoy tonight's event. Back to you, Brian.
Thank you, Alam. And of course, we have some other partners tonight that we're working with as well, including Dana, the Downtown Austin Neighborhood Association, also Farm&City, Friends of Austin Neighborhoods, Rethink 35, and Safe Streets Austin, as well as the West Campus Neighborhood Association. So thank you to all of our partners for your support in helping organize tonight's event. And by the way, speaking of events, we're going to have some additional events coming up in the very near future I want to tell you about very quickly. First, there's a District 3 candidate forum being held in person and online at the Montopolis Rec Center on August the 17th. You should be able to register for that now at the same link where you signed up for tonight's event. And also want to make a special announcement. We have an upcoming forum. Mark your calendars on Tuesday, August 30th with candidates for District 5. More details on an exact location and how to tune in for that will be forthcoming, but mark your calendars, Tuesday, August 30th, District 5. All right, let's get things started without further ado. Now, we had a previous forum. This is the follow-up where we're focusing on housing and transportation. There are 3 sections to tonight's forum. First, questions from the public that were submitted prior to tonight. Secondly, we'll have an opportunity for candidates to question each other. And then finally, in our third round, lightning round, where candidates will have rapid fire questions. Our ground rules are pretty simple. We're going to keep this conversational, keep it on topic. I'll do my part to make sure we include as many candidates as possible in the discussion. And let's begin that discussion now as I'll introduce each of the candidates here. First, Linda Guerrero. Next, Qadri. Also, Joah Spearman. We also have here Ben Leffler. We have Greg Smith, no relation. And lastly, Tom Wald. Thank you to all of the candidates for joining us here tonight. All right, our first question submitted from the public. In fact, this one was submitted by Mr. Dan Keshet. His question is, the group Imagine Austin says we should build housing in all parts of the city. But D9 isn't just all parts. It's the part of the city with the best access to public transportation, walking and cycling infrastructure, government, and jobs. What can we do special and different in District 9 to allow for more access to the fantastic public amenities that we have in the area? And I'm going to start with Linda Guerrero.
Can you?
Hi, Linda. You are, there we go. We have you now. Please go ahead.
Linda, I think you're still muted.
Oh.
Can you unmute?
Now?
Yes, awesome.
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Linda.
Thank you so much. Good evening. I'm happy to be here and be a part of this forum this evening. So you wanted an introduction first, is that correct?
No, the question was, what can we do special or different in District 9 to allow for more access to these fantastic public amenities that we have that are specific and unique to that corridor? And of course, yes, feel free to talk about your experience and background as you like.
All right. So one thing I'd like to let you know is that I have spent the past 20 years working as a community volunteer And I've been the chair of both the Environmental Commission, the Parks Board, and the Downtown Commission. Those are some of the services that I've done these past years. And I think one thing that's going to make us more special will be when we have the completion of the Project Connect. This is going to bring more people in and out. It's going to enhance District 9. And at the same time, I do want to say that it's important that we all come together in order to make sure we have access in every district. I'm a special ed teacher. I've spent 28 years of my life training students on Capital Metro. So I know the struggles of waiting on schedules, delays, having them navigate specific points within where we were trying to travel, being in the heat, having all of these challenges. So access is my number one priority. District 9 is extremely special. And so in many ways, we continue to add to that.
Fantastic. Let's move on now to Qadri. Again. Dan, he says that District 9 is the best part of the city with all the access to the amenities that we've talked about. What do you want to do that's special or different for District 9?
Yeah, I think we can put more amenities that are walking distance, right? So neighborhoods like Hyde Park, like Cherrywood, whether it be coffee shops or corner stores, I think that'll go a long way. I think the expansion of Project Connect will be great, at the same time making sure that I-35 expansion doesn't happen to the degree and the adverse effects that people are looking, which will eliminate businesses, which will eliminate homes, which will push folks out of this city and just put in its place largely unaffordable homes. It will, increase environmental risk to, to folks in the city. So I think the city needs to just, continue on with no to I-35 expansion, continue on with Project Connect. I think living in District 9, I think it's safe to say we have a privilege that a lot of other parts of the city don't have, right? Are we perfect? No, but do we have, a very capable rail and a bus system? Yes, but there's so many communities throughout the city, especially Black and Brown communities, especially communities on the East Side that don't have the equitable transportation, right? So, and they don't have the access to grocery stores. So we're seeing folks have to stores or fast food places, and that's a health adverse health factor for these communities. So it's obviously about District 9. It's about making sure that we can get from point A to point B, but it's also making sure that this Project Connect helps all of Austin. And I'm sorry, one last thing that I want to add. This is a personal anecdote. The rail stops working at 8 o'clock. I did not know that until I went out to dinner one day and thought I could take the rail back home at 9. It doesn't run that late on weekdays. You can buy a ticket. If the ticket comes out, they take your money. But making sure that the rail works past later, our service workers and healthcare workers and so many other folks can use that is really important.
Okay, thank you. So I have time for one more candidate. I'm looking to see if there's one or more of our candidates who wants to jump on this. Ben, okay, Ben Leffler, go ahead.
I appreciate that, Brian. Yeah, so as those folks mentioned, I think District 9 is especially unique in the opportunities to build housing. We obviously have Project Connect's Orange Line that's going to go right down Guadalupe, and that is a huge opportunity to add, both market rate and affordable housing with connectivity to downtown. We also have our transit corridor, some of our biggest transit corridors, including Lamar, south, both north and south of the river, Congress. These are huge opportunities for housing. University of Texas has shown that, affordability can be done at scale, and they're doing that in West Campus. And so if we can continue to build on that, that's a big opportunity to house students. And I think beyond, and 35 as well, I appreciate Zoe pointing that out. This is a big part. Cherrywood is slated to be very impacted by the 35 expansion. And if we can successfully push back against that, that is really critical for the whole city. And I think sort of beyond, or maybe on top of everything else, I think District 9, it's symbolic to have someone in this seat that is thinking about housing. We've had a council member in this seat who has not been, aggressively pursuing housing. And when we have the downtown district and all these central neighborhoods, we need somebody in that seat that's going to be pushing the needle to get housing into our city.
Okay, thank you, Ben. And in fact, you touched on a little bit onto this next question here. Let's move on to that. This one's going to be first for Joah Spearman. Joah, Crudy Modcurdy wants to know if you've signed the candidate pledge to publicly oppose the I-35 expansion and instead comprehensively study Rethink 35 or Reconnect Austin. And if you could please explain whether you have decided to sign the pledge, and if not, why not?
Yes, I have not signed the pledge yet, but I have on the record multiple times stated that I oppose the expansion of I-35. I think that there's a lot of work that needs to happen to really assess the state's plan there. Obviously, I know that there's a lawsuit possibly pending around some of the environmental requirements there. And I support that because obviously if there is any movement on 35, we need to be talking about ensuring that it has the environmental safeguards that we needed to have for the community. But overall, I mean, Linda was talking about Project Connect just a second ago. And I think, you know, Project Connect is a very important project that's happening in the city. And it doesn't make sense to me to expand I-35 at the same time as knowing that we're making a large community-wide investment into public transit infrastructure, in which hopefully Project Connect is just the beginning of that type of investment. But ultimately, for me, when I think about I-35 and I think about the opportunity we have today, it's, you know, whoever's elected to the District 9 seat in 2022 has the potential to potentially serve for another term even after that, which would take us into 2028, which would be the centennial of the 1928 the City of Austin plan, right? And that plan, as many of you know, is the very thing that the Austin city government did that codified a lot of the segregationist policies that remain today, of which I-35 is just one of those pillars. And so I think it's really important that the community thinks really comprehensively about I-35, not just in terms of addressing our traffic congestion today, but addressing decades of segregationist policies that have not allowed this district to be as inclusive and accessible as it should be. So even to the first question about accessibility to those public, you know, assets downtown and District 9, with I-35 kind of serving as this long divide along socioeconomic lines, we can see the damage there every day. If you just walk around in my neighborhood, for example, I live in the Clarksville, Old West Austin area, which doesn't have nearly as many African-American families as it possibly would have without the 1928 city plan. So part of why I'm running is because I think that we have a real opportunity in this next 5 to 10 years to address a lot of those histories, and I-35 is a part of that.
Okay, I want to give one more opportunity. Let's go to Greg Smith. Greg, have you signed the pledge regarding the opposition of the I-35 expansion? And if not, why not?
I have not signed it, and I spoke with, I met with Adam, and I was impressed with everything that the Rethink I-35 organization is trying to do. It was educational for me, for sure. Even though I've lived in Austin for 40 years, it was a really very good history lesson for sure. And I have total respect for what they're trying to do. I did write back to Adam because he followed up and asked if I was going to sign the pledge. And one of the things that I told him is I said, you know, I don't want to commit to signing that pledge and not knowing that I could follow through on anything that I'm signing. And what I did do with Adam is I committed that if I were to take that seat and occupy the seat of D9, that he and his organization would have a seat at the table when you know, I-35, all things I-35 came up on council. So as of now, I have not signed that pledge, no.
Okay, let's move on to our third and final question in this section here. This question comes from Kelsey Hughes. It's going to be for Tom Wald. And her question here is she wants to know what's the most consequential policy that you support, that you believe that your opponents would not support. In other words, what differentiates you from the other candidates in terms of some of the positions that you've taken in this campaign?
That's a great question. I think the differences that will come out are based on my experience working with city council and also with other fellow community organizers, I've worked with countless community groups, on transportation, on even on housing, and on other issues. I don't know that I have, I think that when we're talking about high level issues, housing affordability is very important to me. And I think there's some commonalities among us here. On mobility, I think that one of the things that, I haven't had these thorough conversations with my fellow candidates. So I'll put it out there. I would strongly support making all streets in District 9 safe for people to be able to walk, bike on. I really don't think there should be exceptions, especially over the next several years. That's something that we can accomplish. I think I think as far as positioning, I don't know how much I differ. I think it comes to the ability to bring people out into meetings, to council meetings, and to actually affect change.
Okay, we've got time for one or two more candidates to jump out there. Zoe, I saw your hand first, and then maybe Greg.
I appreciate it, Brian. Also, you very much have a podcaster voice. I just wanted to load that out there.
Thanks.
But no, I think, a lot of us agree on a lot of things when it comes to housing and transit. But I think labor and workers' rights is somewhere where I think we've taken a unique position. Our campaign is the only local race that has unionized, whether it's been Starbucks workers, via 313 workers. We've been very present for those communities, as well as, the moment we launched this campaign, it was about reaching out to everyone and where they are. So 9 months ago when we launched, it was reaching out to, all the unions in this city that make this city go, and hear from them and hear their concerns. It was about listening to city workers who are fighting for $22 minimum, pay. It was hearing from EMS workers who, when they asked for a $27 minimum pay, they were given a 14-cent increase. So I think, being on the side of labor and unions is something that, as a former union member myself with IBEW and CWG, is something I'm very, very passionate about.
Okay, and Greg, I saw your hand shoot up there a minute ago.
Thank you. Part of me wishes that I could spend 30 or 45 minutes with all of the candidates, because I think that there's a lot of, let me say this. I don't want to speak for all the candidates. I think one of the questions of all of the people that I have come in contact with over about the last year and a half is they ask, how are you different than the candidates that you're running against? And I'll be real honest with you, it's a struggle. I haven't done a lot of research on all of the candidates, but I know that I can tell by just listening to them even tonight and being around them on the few times that I've been around them, that they are extremely passionate about the efforts and representing D9. I also believe that if we all got in the room, that there's going to be a lot, like Tom said, there's going to be a lot of times that we really, really agree. And so I think the difficult part for the voter is going to have to figure out the question that was asked by whoever asked in the public. And, I think that there's an experience level here that we all have in different worlds. I'm significantly older than everybody that's the other candidate, and I've been in Austin a long, long time. But having said that, I really believe that there's a lot that we have in common. I spent a little time with Tom this weekend and talked to him, and I can just tell that there is a lot of synergy there. And so I actually struggle with this question for sure.
Okay, well, struggle no longer, Greg, because we're going to move on now to the next section. But thank you all, seriously, for all your answers previously. Now, this is actually my favorite section, okay, because this is the part where we are going to go through the questions that each of the candidates have submitted to the forum. All right, now our first question is from Ben Leffler, and I'm just going to look to the group. I'm going to ask folks to just basically raise your hand and let me know who wants to take it first. But Ben's question is, when we give people effective alternative transportation options, many will choose to drive less. This improves sustainability and reduces congestion. So as the next council member in District 9, what measures will you take to reduce car reliance in the district and citywide? Who wants to take this one first? Okay, Joah.
A great question, Ben. I think this is a really pivotal question. I think that now is the time in Austin, especially in District 9, to be asking this type of question, not just amongst city council candidates, but I think for the city at large. Not only do we have enough climate change or evidence of climate change and enough metrics and things to know that we humans are impacting the climate negatively, but we also have made a big investment or made a big decision around an investment in terms of Project Connect. So while Project Connect is wonderful, we're not really going to reap all the benefits of that for many years from a transit standpoint. And so I think in the near term, with this next, I would say, council term especially, I think the most important thing we can be doing is saying, what can we do in District 9 now, between now and whenever Project Connect is breaking ground, to really start introducing this public transit mindset that we need to have, especially in the urban core. So for me, I live it first person. September will mark 5 years that I haven't had a car in Austin. So I haven't owned a car in Austin since 5 years ago. And I made that decision because the very question that Ben's asked. I think it's really important that we start figuring out ways to live car free or reduce our car usage. I know that's not true for everyone. Some people are still going to need their transportation either to commute into work or because of housing or children situations. But for me, I'm one of the people who's able to do it. And so I feel like District 9 has more and more people moving to the city, and more people who are choosing, whether that's empty nesters who are moving in from let's say Westlake, moving into District 9 and saying, we want to be in a more urban environment, more dense environment. I also think we should be thinking about the ways in which getting people out of their cars allows people to be in more walkable scenarios, which, supports local businesses, helps us make investments in things like arts and public places, helps places like Red River where there are a lot of live music venues. I think all the things happening in District 9, whether that's Zach Theater, whether that's Red River, whether that's Rainy Street, all these things should really be fostered around walkability and bikeability as well. And so I'm living it already, and I think I would bring some valuable experience to the District 9 seat.
Okay, Linda, earlier you mentioned your experience, I believe, working with Metro. What's your solution to make District 9 less car reliant?
One thing I would like to mention is that I was instrumental on the stakeholders group for creating UNO overlay in the University of Texas. I represented my Hancock Neighborhood Association and worked with the 7 other neighborhoods in order to step up to the concerns that the University of Texas was having to house their students and house them with affordability units. And I guess I spent 5 years maybe of my life trying to push that forward and ensuring that it happened. When we did that plan, which I just drove by it this afternoon on the way home, it continues to build out. It continues to be a success. We worked with council, we worked with city staff. But one thing we kept in mind is how to reduce the carbon footprint and to allow those students to have a walkable area, to be able to navigate in a way where they didn't come in on buses. And so that has been a true success. Also, and I just want to give a shout out to Tom Wald, who worked with me on the I-35 working group with the coalition. And thank you, Tom. I appreciate all the work you did and the many meetings you attended. I guess we had 12, 15. But one thing we looked at and our very biggest concern was, of course, environment and the reduction of pollution and how we can move forward for not only District 9, but we have to think of all of our neighbors and how we have a healthy, safe, situation where people can access more and more. I had 3 times that I asked for briefings regarding Project Connect on the Environmental Commission, and I also served on and was appointed to the South Central Waterfront Advisory Board. We kept asking Project Connect that we wanted information on east-west connectivity, which is on the very, very back burner. All the emphasis is on orange. We're moving forward, but I say to accelerate these other connectivities that are lacking and try to accelerate and push on that so that we have both the orange and we have the blue and the green, and we have definite dates. And another thing I'd like to mention is that my concern is also the displacement that could happen to the small businesses, and to ensure that we're able to we got what, 300 million set aside for that, for the connectivity. And then as a person that's concerned about access, I should hope we look at what is happening now with Cat Metro and how do we increase, improve, and fast track any of those so that we do have those opportunities. Okay. People can take it now.
That's fantastic. I want to give each of the folks who submitted a question to answer them and take just a couple seconds to give their answers. So Ben, this was your fantastic question. Please go ahead. Give us a little bit on your answer.
Thanks, Brian. I feel like every time you ask me something, you're going to ask me if I'm ready to rumble or something. But no, I mean, we're talking about Project Connect. Like, this is a huge opportunity. There's going to be a lot of housing associated with it. Are we going to require these onerous parking requirements with that housing, or are we going to decouple that? I think there's a huge opportunity in the new structures that we have to lower, if not eliminate, parking requirements. Right now, we over subsidize car use in this city. We really push people buildings are required to create parking spaces, which cost a lot of money, to take money away from housing. And so I think there's a lot of policy opportunities to disincentivize that, especially when we're talking about transit-oriented development along our rail line. So I really appreciate the answers, y'all. Thanks for entertaining my question.
Hey, Brian, can I just
very quickly,
real quickly, because I know Zoe may want to do, I'll just 10 seconds.
We got some more questions coming, but take this one real fast.
I got it. First of all, the question is awesome. It's a great question, Ben. And Joah, that was an awesome answer too. I mean, I commend you for not having a car for 5 years, but I would just like to add 2 things to what all of the candidates have said. Is I think it's really, really, and I'm a huge Project Connect fan. I think it's really, really important that safety and education is part of what Ben's question is all about when it comes to walkability and the ability to get around the streets in D9. Those 2 issues are critical, I think, in my estimation.
Great. All right,
15 seconds, Brian. 10 seconds. I just want to say
we have more transport questions coming up, but yes, go ahead. Take 15 seconds.
I was just going to say expanding the rail will help our working class, especially our construction workers who work downtown. A lot of them have to come and park $30-40 a day, spend money on food, spend money on gas. If we have a rail that hits downtown and they can just catch a rail to the downtown area, I think it makes life easier. So hopefully that was 15 seconds.
That's fine. All right. Our next question was submitted by Linda Guerrero. In the last few years, there have been proposals to redevelop the public golf courses at Hancock and at Lyons Municipal, also known as Muni, with housing. Do you support those proposals? And I'm looking, Tom, Wald, do you want to take this one first, and then Greg?
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the question. So we're talking about public golf courses, and there are several of them, and they all have their own own constituencies for keeping them as golf courses. And when Linda asked about developing them, there's multiple ideas that are floating out there. Obviously keeping them as golf courses. Some of them are opening up the use for them for multiple park uses other than golf. Some people talk about building housing on them. And I just want to note that they all are all public golf courses, or they all are all golf courses. So there would certainly need to be a public vote to convert them to use other than a park. So as far as, you know, a decision coming from city council can certainly look into proposing something like that, but ultimately it's going to be a referendum. I do certainly explore or support converting some of the golf courses for allowing for multiple uses. They're large golf courses right in the center of the city where there is no access to large parks, and people are certainly just really wanting more access to natural areas and to public space and to parks. And our city has, has not been able to keep up with that. So I would certainly support, just to name a few golf courses. And here's the question. So we have Muni, we have Hancock, which is in D9. And then just outside of D9 is Morris, the Morris Williams Golf Course. All are in places, well, especially the Hancock Golf Course and Morris Williams are in places where it does end up creating a real disruption for people to be able to access park space. So I think that there's a few questions in there, and I think that it's best to have a really robust public conversation, and I would lean toward making Hancock available to more people.
Okay, Greg, did you have your hand up on this one?
I did.
Okay.
So prior to my current business, I was in the golf business. I was the director of golf at country clubs around the state, Barton Creek and Spanish Oaks to be two of the three that I was at. And I am I'm a big proponent of affordable housing and density, especially on the transit lines. But Muni is the hill that I could die on. There is so much history and tradition at Muni that I want Muni to stay as is. It's just my crown jewel. I played golf there. I've played golf at Muni since I was 7 years old. I've met more people and had more friends and made more relationships through golf in places like Muni than I could ever imagine. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow for some, but I have to go on record as saying that Muni is near and dear to my heart. There's so much history there. We could talk for the rest of the time that we've got allotted here about Muni. So I just want to go on record as saying that's my position.
I appreciate you taking that as a position there. Linda, you submitted the question. So do you want to take a couple seconds to explain why you asked it and what your answer is? Oh, Linda, you're muted still. We want to be able to hear you. Yeah. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
We got you. Please let us know. Yeah.
This is going to become, I think, more and more of a contentious issue as we go forward with the densification, people moving into town. District 9's middle name is density. It's been happening since day one. And it continues to impact and push forward. I know that this is a real concern. For example, Hancock Golf Course was actually 18 holes. And now that you see the HEB, there's all this it's called the Hancock Shopping Center in District 9. That was taken. That golf course was taken and they decided to develop it with public land. So I was just really curious how my fellow colleagues felt about this topic and issue, because I think more and more it will bubble up for an issue, conversation, and we need to look holistically at, how do we see public land and where would we look at specific land within District 9? Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Ben, I do see your hand up there. Do you want to take just a couple seconds real quickly on this one?
Yeah, just quickly. I think that if we want to preserve spaces like that, if we do, I think it's really important to think about where we can add density along our corridors. And we've just done that so ineffectively to this point that, if we want to preserve these spaces, we need to put, more housing along our corridors. And so I think that's my position on that.
Okay. We have our next question here was submitted by Qadri. And it's a really great sort of philosophical question here. Electing a leader to address Austin's affordability and housing crises must be our number one priority, but that candidate will face pressure to seek consensus rather than to take those tough votes that may be what's right for the city. And additionally, the perspectives at City Hall are sometimes skewed to various interests, and council members can wind up under intense pressure to side with whoever the loudest group is in the room, even if that position may not be the best for the city or for everyday Austinites. So, as a candidate and as a person, how do you plan to navigate this reality so that the voices of groups like, say, renters that bear the burden of our housing crisis are considered fairly? I'm going to go to Joah first on this one. Yeah, Joah, please go ahead. And then Tom. Yep.
Great, thank you. This is a really important question. And I think it's already been stated that there are a number of candidates who I think share opinions and stances on certain issues. And I think this is an area of real differentiation because ultimately what I hear in this question is there a track record and experience set around having conviction, especially if others don't share your conviction around an issue like affordability or housing. So I also want to say I'm really proud of all of us as a group that we haven't said the words land development code until this point in the conversation, because I think that's really impressive, actually, considering how important of an issue it is. But I think ultimately, when I hear this question, what I go back to is that I'm an entrepreneur, and I've started 4 businesses in Austin, and each time those businesses have succeeded or failed in different ways, but each one has required a level of conviction. And so I've really built my entire career on having the kind of conviction that I think it takes to lead on an issue where maybe others don't see what you see yet. So I think conviction is really important, but I think the only thing that helps with conviction is having real community. And so I think that's where I lean in my experience, serving on the board of Zach Theater, serving on the board of Austin PBS, being on the Downtown Commission, being on the Music Commission, and being in settings where you really have to make things happen through a coalition or through community. And so I think when I hear that question, what I really think about is, do you have someone in District 9 who has the conviction and has the ability to build a community around that? And I think that that's something that I really am proud of my record showing. And I think to the earlier point about the current person in District 9, Kathy Tovo, I think she has a lot of conviction around a lot of things, especially around housing, especially around affordability. And in many ways, she's been effective in if you were to ask her, I think she would say that she's been effective. And I think that's because she has a lot of conviction around her opinions, which I respect her for. The thing that I think is different for me with her, for example, would be that I have over-indexed on involving community in everything that I've done, and not just community that voted me into office, but a community that represents the restaurant workers, the nonprofit workers, the public safety employees. All these different people matter. And so I think we really have to be thinking about someone who has conviction around the working class and around the middle class, around people who give so much to Austin and District 9, not just people who can afford to buy single family homes inside of it.
All right, thank you, Joe. Tom, let's go to you. What's your plan? How are you going to navigate that pressure between taking those tough votes, finding consensus, listening to those advocacy groups? What's your plan?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think Joah actually hit on a number of great points. It is certainly about bringing out the community who supports good positions and the positions that you're working on. I think it's also important to just look at, I've been working on this for 16 years. I've been to many bike lane meetings, had many people angry about maybe losing our on-street parking, maybe losing a lane on the road when there's 4 lanes on a neighborhood street. And there's just, you just have those conversations. There's almost 60, well now there's almost 60 people on this call. It takes just a couple dozen people, maybe even just 10 people to come to a city council meeting, make the points that you can't necessarily make on the dais. And once those points are made, it's really hard to counter them if they're good points, right? And so I think that having a very experienced community organizer, I know that one of the ways to help accomplish something in the face of a lot of disagreement is to make sure that your community is coming out to the meetings. I've been actually asked this by a number of people in my exploration for running for city council, and I'm kind of surprised by the question, but I get it. I totally get it. They're like, what are you going to do in the face of people who are opposing building new housing? And it's like, I've been doing this for years. There's multiple ways to bring people along. So Joah and I just talked about bring community out to support your positions, but the people who are maybe on the fence, that's a little bit different, right? And I've talked with a number of people, many people who are, willing to accept some change in how their built environment is, if it means creating a good. And oftentimes for that good is, are people going to be able to afford to live in District 9 and be able to live near opportunity? And I think that there's so many people who, once they can see that, they're willing to accept if there's a threeplex next door, a sixplex next door, or if there's more people that have access to transit in their neighborhood.
Okay, Ben, I'll give you a couple quick seconds, and I want to hear from Zoe.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, so I did have an opportunity to work in a council office. I work for Councilmember Chris Riley, and I can tell you firsthand, it is very difficult to get almost anything done at City Hall. It is hard. You have to build coalitions. And as Tom and Joah said, you have to bring people into the conversation. And in my experience, bringing people into the conversation earlier rather than later, hearing those concerns, trying to get them addressed, being collaborative, not shutting them out of the process is the only way to get things done. And I think that as Austin has continued to grow and we have more engaged stakeholder groups now than we ever have, making sure that folks who maybe can't get down to City Hall, reaching out to them, going to where they are, getting those folks involved in the process, that's how you're going to build consensus around big ideas. And then also recognizing that there's no such thing as a perfect policy, and we can't let some mythical silver bullet stop us from getting something tangible done. So thanks for the questions, though.
All right, Zoe, you've clearly thought about this a lot, and specifically through the lens of the burden that renters pay in this. So take us inside your mind. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I've like Ben, I've had an opportunity to work in city halls. I've worked in city halls as small as Kyle and as large as Houston, but I think the work that I'm most proud of is being that of an organizer. And one thing that I realized later on in life is that I was always an organizer. Being a South Asian, being a Muslim, you organize for survival, right? And so that your group, your community can often have a voice at the table. And both of my communities, truthfully, at least in this city, have never had that voice. So whether it's xenophobia, with my Asian side, or it's my hometown mosque being burnt to the ground, it's always about organizing communities together, whether it be my own or others, and educating them and coming together and fighting, for the one that has no voice often. And that's why I'm running, right? To make sure that I speak for everyone in Austin, that that at the end of the day, I'm applying for a job, and everyone on this call who lives in District 9 and others are my bosses, are those that are looking at my resume and will ultimately decide, do we hire this person or not? And I answer to them. I don't answer to any special interest groups. I answer to them. So whether it's a city issue like housing affordability, like transit, or truthfully social issues, when we have a state government that when our grid fails, rather than fix the damn grid, they punch down on trans kids, or they take away abortion rights. And I think the responsibility of a city council member in Austin is, yes, to make sure we have equitable transportation, and yes, to make sure we have affordable housing, but it's also to make sure that we protect Austin. So yeah, that's it. That's my answer.
Great. All right. Thank you, Zoe. Now, we had three of our candidates, Tom, Joah, and Greg, all submitted questions revolving around experience, wanting to hear, about each candidate speak about their particular experience in a particular area. So I'm going to read all three questions. Everyone's going to take about a minute of time to answer which one of these three questions. So the first one from Tom was, what are some successful city policy initiatives or projects that you have led, and what was your role? The question from Joah was that District 9 is not only the urban core of Austin, but it's also the cultural and creative epicenter. He wants to hear how each candidate, what their experience that they bring to give them a firm understanding of that unique role for District 9 and touch on their plans to ensure that that's supported. And lastly, from Greg Smith, what work experience do you have that shaped who you are as a candidate or how you will be or how you will serve on council? So I'm going to go down the list here. Let's start again at the top. We'll start with Linda.
Thank you so much for that question. I certainly do appreciate it. I want to say that my experience for the past 20 plus years working on boards and commissions has been very valuable and helpful. And I am a true leader in that I have successfully pushed changes of city ordinances to better communities and community benefits. I'll give you an example. When I was chair of the Parks Board, I found out that the parkland dedication fee was only for subdivisions and everything was going up, and we were not addressing all the high rises in Austin, and the park system that has tremendous deferred projects was losing out on that potential. And so I went to the director and said, we must do something. This isn't right. Everything's going up. We have to continue to give benefits for open space, trails, and we need to also make sure that people have accessibility. So it took a long but steady drive, and my components for everything that I've done have been process, procedure, transparency, and accountability. And with those key components, it was a fight. It was contentious. We had a lot of pushback on this issue. And bottom line, we were able to amend the parkland dedication fee so that they could continue to capture parkland fees not only for just subdivisions, which was almost an antiquated ordinance, but to then foster more abilities for the budget to grow and for the people to benefit from that. Also,
that's okay. Just real quickly, if you could, so we can move on. We want to give everybody a chance to touch on this. Please go ahead. No, that's good.
And so that's one. Also, I look very holistically at projects. These past 20 years, I've been in contentious items, listened to cases that you had public discussion for 3 and 4 hours. Yes, but if you continue to hear the community, you look for the win-win, that is very significant in bringing people together to the table to make these hard decisions.
Okay,
and then
let's go ahead and move on to the next person here. No, that's okay. I do want to keep it to about a minute and a half, please, if we can, just for time here. So let's move on to Zoe. Zoe, if you could tell us where your experience, either somewhere around city policy, cultural, creative, or your specific work experience you're going to bring to council.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm sorry. There were 3 questions. So I was taking notes on which one. Yeah, I'll just answer generally on experience and kind of go from there. Yeah, as I said with the last question, I've worked in city governments as small as Kyle, as large as Houston. The city of Kyle, I worked with the city manager's office. Kyle at the time, I don't know if it still is, but at the time was one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. So just the tremendous growth that was going on. Actually looked at the city of Austin and a lot of the things that they were doing for inspiration. And then with the mayor's office, Mayor Turner in Houston, I worked in his office with Trade and International Affairs. And then I've also done policy work at the Texas Capitol. I worked for Eric Johnson, who was a state rep, is now the mayor of Dallas. So a lot of our work that legislative session had to do, truthfully, a lot to do with local issues, with his mayoral run happening at the same time as session. And then, I've worked on electoral campaigns. I've worked on congressional races. I worked for Beto when he ran for Senate. I also worked for Senator Warren when she ran for president. So that organizing in electoral politics, but also, before I became a candidate, the last thing I was doing before I took on this crazy adventure was, at the Capitol, there were so many different communities that were under attack, as I noted. So I was working with advocacy groups, fighting this harmful voter restriction laws that we were seeing taking place in Texas, these anti-trans and anti-abortion. What we were also seeing was not only were they happening in Texas, but they were being copy and pasted in states like Florida and Georgia and South Carolina and Alabama. So, you know, having that relevant experience in local government, but also, you know, working on policy and organizing is, I think, just a unique skill set that I have, and hopefully will translate well when it comes to not only my time as a candidate, but in office. Because at the end of the day, we need someone who has experience in policy making on the official side. But this is an electoral campaign, and you win elections by mobilizing and organizing.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Joah next. Joah, if you could touch on one of your areas of experience you think you're going to bring to council that you want to highlight for our
well,
viewers.
and I hear this question specifically around the many identities that District 9 has. It's the commercial hub, it's the creative hub in many ways, it's the cultural hub of Austin. And what I draw on the most there is my experience serving as vice chair of the Austin Music Commission. Something I'm really proud of is that while I was the vice chair of that commission, that helped pave the way for Red River to be designated as a cultural district. So a lot of the things that are in place now were put in place when in 2012, 2013, when I was on that commission. And I'm really proud of that because you can see now how that has kicked off a cycle of now I think we're doing our second or our third music industry census. We're trying to take steps. The hot tax initiative, in which we're thinking about creating a live music fund and thinking about ways in which we can further support musicians. All these things, I think, came out of that time, and I point that out because a lot of that happened in the pre 10-1 Austin. So for those who are familiar, in 2014, that was the first year we switched to 10-1, and I think it's really relevant because in many ways, when it comes to cultural issues, whether that's the music economy of Austin, whether that's the restaurant scene in Austin, District 9 has outsized influence, in part because of the density of District 9. And so I think that this is really relevant experience to have served on the Music Commission, to have served on the board of Zach Theater and Austin PBS and these cultural institutions in Austin, because a lot of the decisions that Austin's making about the quality of life as it relates to culture and creativity stem from things happening in District 9. And so my lived experience over the last 20 years in Austin, my professional experience as an entrepreneur on these boards, all this stuff I think is really relevant, specifically to District 9, because I think if anything we've learned in the last 8 years of 10-1, it's that these council districts don't just need politicians who are really good at politics and who have good political experience. These districts also need people who are thought leaders on issues that everyday people experience, whether that's safe streets or having different multimodal options for transit. All these different things are really important. And so I think I'm really trying to approach my run, not as out of political ambition, but really just focused on problem solving and tapping my experience to address the needs uniquely of District 9.
Thank you, Joah. Ben, I've got you next on the list.
All righty. So I'm going to try to address all three questions quickly. So the first one, when I worked in Councilmember Riley's office, you kind of touched the sort of gamut of things. And I got the opportunity to work on stuff as large as, helping Austin Energy improve their renewables mix. So right before 10-1, our office, as well as some others, worked with a lot of activists, and we got Austin Energy to greatly improve the percentage of renewables in those plans, which has huge impacts for Austin. But I also got to work on something as sort of seemingly petty as the Barton Springs Spillway. We actually legalized dog swimming there, which seems kind of petty, but up to that point, it was technically illegal to have your dog swimming there, and people were getting $500 fines whenever the cops wanted to show up. And we made it legal for that to be there, and therefore no one is ever going to be impacted by that, which are oftentimes, sort of discriminatory and targeting. So I understand the power of improving policy for our city. Furthermore, I lived in District 9 in Clarksville for 5 years when I was a restaurant worker. I worked at the Tavern on 12th and Lamar, and I walked down the street to wait tables or serve bar, and I rented there, and I was able to live. And I understand how valuable that is for our community to be able to have restaurants and restaurant workers that can walk to work and not have to drive in from the outskirts of our community, because that's what makes our community special. If our musicians and our restaurant workers and our creatives can't afford to live here, then we lose everything that makes Austin special. And I think having someone with lived experience in that here in Austin is valuable to have on the dais. And beyond that, just one little aspect of my community organizing. After Trump's election in 2016, some neighbors and I wanted to get together and do a yard sale for Planned Parenthood. Our goal was $1,000 to raise because we wanted to give something back. Well, we worked really hard and we raised $26,000 that weekend for Planned Parenthood. And it just showed me what the power of community is, getting people together, getting them behind something. We ended up starting a nonprofit and raising over $50,000 for Planned Parenthood and Casa Marianella and the ACLU. So I know big things are possible when you get folks involved. I love this city, and I think that we have an opportunity to really make this a more inclusive place.
Great, thank you, Ben. Tom, you submitted one of these experience questions. Yours was specifically around city policy. What experience do you want to bring to the table, or did you want to highlight?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could just briefly remind me of the other two related questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So Joah's question was around the cultural and creative aspects of District 9, which are unique to that part of the city. And lastly, Greg wanted to know about specific work experience, soon your career outside of policy and running as a candidate.
Sure. Those are both great questions, and I'll cover those first so I don't miss them. One of the big reasons I moved to Austin, there were several reasons, but one of the key things was that it was really a hub for live music. I have a background from college DJing several years as a volunteer and paid, and so live music and music is just incredibly important to me. Also been a professional photographer and worked at the Daily Texan as well in that capacity. And my 22 years here, I've seen countless people in the creative industry who can no longer afford to live here and have simply gone on to other cities. And that's one of the biggest losses I've seen in our city, frankly. My background, my first big job really in community organizing was with an organization called League of Bicycling Voters back in 2009. We changed the name to Bike Austin to make it a little bit more approachable. And now the organization has now merged into another organization that was part of Walk Austin. And now we're called Safe Streets Austin, which is going to continue to really help make our city safer for people to bike, walk, take wheelchair, and then also address safety of people in cars, making it easier for passengers and drivers of cars to be safer on the streets as well. For those who know me, I have a lot of background in transportation. For those who don't, I'll just say that for the last 16 years, I've had a role, whether large or small, in pretty much all of the sidewalks, the bike lanes, the mid-block signalized crossings that we see around Austin now. We just reached our 100th safe crossing, wheelchair access, and then many of the trails as well. My experience currently, I'm serve as the executive director of the Red Line Parkway Initiative, supporting the voters which voted in 2004 to create a trail along the Capital Metro Rail regional line. And I would say in this work, it connects with everything. Transportation, mobility, if you work in it long enough, you work on pretty much everything else. So I worked on the watershed protection ordinance, as well as economic development, of course, parks, the intersection with that, and then housing and anti-displacement, which is just incredibly important as well. If you can have great places to walk and bike, but if you can't afford to live there, you can't experience them. And so I was really proud as part of the People United for Mobility Action, or PUMA, we were successful in getting $300 million as part of Project Connect, which is a great project in and of itself, but $300 million in anti-displacement funding, which should go a long way to helping to ensure that people of all backgrounds and incomes can live near transit and have access to that.
Great, thank you, Tom. Okay, Greg, certainly last but not least, you had one of the questions there about work experience, but also feel free to touch on anything in the city or in the cultural and creative work that you've done in the past.
I think 35 years of being in private business and managing thousands of employees and expectations of ownership and clients has pushed me to bring what I think is desperately needed to the city council in District 9, and that's accountability and transparency. And I really believe that if we don't have both of those on going forward with whoever represents District 9, that I think we're going to be in some real trouble, even more trouble than we're in right now. So my answer is short because I know we're short on time, but again, I think my private business background allows me the opportunity to bring some of those characteristics to the table that will assist Austin.
Great. Thank you, Greg. We have reached the top of the hour. We're actually doing really great on time, and we're so thankful for all of you out there watching this important forum. We're going to go now to our last section, the lightning round section. Now, these are questions that were submitted, again, by local Austinites. Please take just about 10, 15 seconds. If you want to keep it yes, no, that's great. But we'll go down the list and give everybody a chance just to very quickly answer these questions that we have here in the lightning round. Now, the first is from Daniel. He wants to know if you would commit to reducing travel lanes or right-of-way for major corridors throughout the city in order to achieve specific climate goals. All right, I'm going to go basically in the same order that we've been going before. So I'll go Linda, Zoe, Joah, and then Ben, Greg, Tom. So Linda, you're first.
Thank you so much. I would say with right-of-ways, they're very tricky. On the Environmental Commission, we had many issues and reasons why the right-of-way was needed. If we work with the specific transportation, if we work with the environment, if we look at any sort of reasons why that right-of-way is there for safety, or we can adjust it, then I think that's a potential. But first of all, we must go through process, procedure, transparency, and accountability. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So,
Yeah, I'll make it real quick. Yes.
okay, great. Joah.
Yes, keeping in mind that for the next 10 years, Project Connect is going to bring about a considerable amount of construction mitigation requirements. And so I think we should be thinking about optimizing for Project Connect success before we think about taking away right-of-way in certain lanes.
Great. Ben.
I yes, and agree, especially depending on 35 and what the impacts of that road will be. We're going to have a lot of construction in Austin.
Okay. Greg.
I'm going to say yes, but I'm also going to admit that I have a lot to learn on that subject.
Okay. And Tom.
Yes, there's certainly corridors where we can make more access for whether it's buses or biking or walking. And I will just add a related thing. We can almost immediately, within a matter of months, make it more available for buses to hit green lights rather than waiting at red lights. There's just no reason that buses hit so many red lights.
Okay, great. Our next question is from Mateo. And we'll go in reverse order this time here. So we'll start with Tom, Greg, and then Ben. Will you vote to completely eliminate parking mandates, also known as minimum parking requirements, throughout the city? Tom, you're first.
Yes. And I think, and I've talked about this with a number of people on the call. The only exceptions might be just ensuring that there is access for people who are mobility impaired to have a space nearby. But as far as parking mandates, yes.
Okay, Greg.
Easy question, yes.
All right, Ben.
Yes.
Okay, Joah.
Yes.
And Zoe, and then Linda.
I'll go with yes as well.
Linda, will you, sorry. The
Yes.
question was on parking mandates. Yep.
Thank you. Parking mandates, pretty much I'm at 95, 96%. Again, it would depend on where the parking is and on the specific situation. There's always a double-edged sword that could pop up and unintended consequences that happen. So but possibly it's 98%.
Okay. Our next question is from Key, and they want to know if you support 3 units on corner lots. I'm going to go start in the middle here. Let's start with Joah.
3 units on corner lots. I need to actually learn more specifically about what they mean by this. Is this a question about like a triplex specifically, or is it a question about 3 single family homes? Like I would need to know more, but I'm inclined to say yes. But again, I would like to know specifically more if they're talking about a specific housing type.
Yeah, we got a little bit of a clarification. Actually, Key's in the chat. So they've asked it could be either attached or detached. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, still same answer. I support it. I mean, we need more density and we need more affordability, and density is going to help with a little bit of it, but focusing on affordability will definitely do it.
Okay, Ben?
I think in general, like obviously we need a lot more infill housing, but maybe the answer is not 3, maybe it's 4, maybe it's otherwise. And so I think that I would want to get a little bit more clarity on that, because not every corner lot is created equally, and we want to get as much infill housing as we can.
Okay, Greg? Greg, I'm sorry. I think you're muted, or I just didn't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I agree.
Okay. And Tom?
I'll say yes, but I do want to know under SF3, which is the zoning throughout much of central Austin, you can already build a duplex plus an ADU as long as there's space. So you can already build 3 units on many of the lots. I think the guide star is to make sure that we do have enough housing near opportunity. Oh, someone's saying, no, you can't. That's my understanding, if I'm getting it wrong, but I believe in SF3, you can build a duplex and then you can also build an ADU as long as there's enough room. And we can, people can talk about that another time. But as far as how, supporting triplex seems like a natural progression.
Okay, and then Linda, and then Zoe.
Thank you. I would say that corner lots are very significant. Of course, we would want to give people the ability to build to their entitlements on that property. And again, triplexes. Tom, I thought that with a duplex, you couldn't have an ADU, but I need to check on that too. Anyway, corner lots, depends where they are, who owns them. So of course, we would always look at that and again, get consensus and find ways to work through any issues.
Great, and Zoe.
Yeah, yes, we need to build more for the missing middle, and we also need to make it easier to build ADUs and to expedite the permitting process, which is very slow in Austin.
All right, and then the last question is also from Key. Good thing that they're here in case we need any more clarification on this one. Do you support a lighter site plan process for smaller sites, 1 acre or less? And I'll go ahead and start with Tom.
Smaller site, yes, that you don't need to have as complex of a site plan process going up to several units. Absolutely, it should be simplified. Yep.
Okay, and then Linda.
I agree. I think it's very important that we look at this and try to densify as much as we can with that unit.
Zoe?
Yes, we need to simplify the process.
And Joah?
Yes, and I think we're going to get consensus here, which is, Linda's talking about consensus. I think this is an issue where no matter who's elected, the person should take this up as one of their top priorities day one.
Oh, great. And then Ben?
I agree as well.
Okay, and Greg?
Easy, yes, for sure.
Yeah, it's we clearly had some consensus here on some of these questions here, and so we're going to take a minute for each candidate to provide some closing statements here as we wrap up our forum. So I'm going to start with Ben, and we'll go down through the list again. If you could just keep it to about a minute, and thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate Aura and all the partner organizations and you, Brian, for this tonight. I think this has been an awesome discussion about, bringing more housing, more affordability, more transit to Austin. It's really great to see a lot of consensus on these issues, especially across a pretty diverse field of folks here. So, I think it's so great that we're having such a robust housing discussion, because it is really the existential issue in Austin. Folks, check out benleffler.com. Please reach out. I would love to have your support. I would love to have additional conversations. I really appreciate just getting out there in the community and talking to folks. So thank you for having me on.
Great. Let's go to Greg Smith for a closing statement.
I too want to thank Aura. I also want to thank the other candidates. I look forward to meeting you guys and having a bigger relationship than we have right now. I think win, lose, or draw for me, I want to be a part of, the success that needs to happen in Austin. I've lived here a long, long time, over 40 years. And so I've got some passion in me left to try to make, Austin a whole lot more affordable and something that I've enjoyed over all of these years. So I look forward to, the rest of the journey with all of you guys. I also want to thank everybody that's here on the forum, all of the comments. I appreciate all of those. And much like what Ben said, I think everybody should check out everybody's website. I think it's important that the voter is educated about who they're going to elect for D9. So I would suggest absolutely check out my opponent's website as well as mine. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. And Tom Wald, if you could, please.
Yeah, I want to echo that, putting something together like this takes a good deal of effort, but it's an incredible service to the community to have these issues discussed, and especially in the context of a city council race. I really appreciate all the people who've been part of putting this together, Aura, Brian, and the others. I'm really excited to be working on housing affordability. I've been, like a lot of us, been frustrated that we haven't seen major progress on it. People absolutely deserve to live in District 9 of all backgrounds, all incomes. And it also includes going beyond that, again, having safe streets so that people who can't drive a car or do not want to drive a car have other options to be able to get around safely, conveniently, enjoyably in District 9 and throughout the region. And then I just wanted to say, beyond that, an inclusive city also means that our public safety treats people well as well. And so just ensuring that people of all backgrounds, races, immigrant status, again, feel welcome to live and thrive in our city. I encourage you all to visit tomwald.com. If you haven't yet, follow me on Twitter, follow us via the email list. And then I want to say that, feel free to give me a call. My number is, I'll put it in the chat. And I look forward to talking with y'all.
All right, let's
One more
go
thing,
next.
sorry, I just want to say, for those who live in D9, I ask for your vote, and I encourage you to come out on beginning October 24th.
Let's go next to Linda Guerrero.
Thank you. This has been a great opportunity. I really do appreciate it. I'd just like to say a few words that I was born and raised in Austin. I was born and raised in D9. My family lived in a property that my grandfather subdivided so that we would have that opportunity to have housing. And so that is very important to me. Also, I'm concerned because I have a rental property that I share with a sister. We're taking a shocking situation where we were going to have to raise our rent to our students by over $500 a month. I'm going to take that hit because it is so unfair. And the reason we support that rental property is because we went to school back at the university and we knew what it was like to have rents where you could afford to walk to school. And then last but not least, my family has a deep, deep root here in Austin, Texas. We've been fighting injustice, which is now called inequities, for centuries and for generations. I'm second generation Mexican-American family. And so I'm here to continue the struggle and to listen. And I'd love any opportunity I can have to continue to work with District 9 residents. Thank you so much.
All right, Qadri.
Cool. I want to thank Aura and all the other fantastic groups for putting this event together. So humble to share this space with everyone that's on board. But my name is Zohaib Qadri. I'm a candidate for Austin City Council in District 9. I'm the child of immigrants. I wasn't born in Austin, but I choose to be in Austin. It's a city that's opened up its arms to me, that's made me one of its own. When I've had low moments, it's protected me, and that Austin should be enjoyed by everyone, regardless if you were born here or not, regardless if you've lived here for 55 years or if you've lived here for 5 months. This is your city and it should work for you. We announced this campaign about 9 months ago, and that was very intentional to build relationships and not to be transactional. We wanted to get to know our neighbors. We wanted to get to know those who call this city home. And you know, we've been able to build that broad base of support by everyday Austinites. We have the most first-time donors to a city council election. We have the most individual donors in this race, and we have the smallest average donation size. And I think that shows through our ground game and the volunteer base that we've been able to build, and that will hopefully lead to a victory come November 8th. But no, just super honored once again to be here. Would love everyone's support who's District 9. I'll also drop my details in the chat, but you know, thank you again, Brian, and thank you again, Aura, for putting on this event. And if you're not able to do any more events like this, Brian, there's always a podcast for you.
All right, thank you. And Joah Spearman.
Just joining the chorus saying thank you so much for putting this event together. I, as a constituent and voter first, I am very happy with the robust number of candidates running for this seat. I think it signifies how important this District 9 council seat is. And then I want to bring it back to why we're even having this discussion. We're talking about building a more abundant Austin. We're talking about housing and transit and how those are levers to create more abundance and share that abundance. And so for me, I grew up, I'm the youngest of 3 boys, grew up on food stamps, single mom, just up the road in Killeen. And I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college. So Austin, I came here to Austin to kind of break a generational barrier for my family. And when I think about how do we create a more abundant Austin, I think it starts with this District 9 seat. I think we need someone in this seat who understands fundamentally that local government is local first and government second. We don't need someone in this seat who's going to play politics and use this as a ladder to run for Senate one day or whatever else they see. I think that we need someone in this seat who's really got to focus on the community here, whether that's restaurant workers or nonprofit workers or musicians or renters or young professionals or young families or seniors who are trying to age in place here in District 9. And so I'm really excited to represent this district. My website's joah4austin.com. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to see you. I'm thankful to have the support of people like Paul Scott, who leads Health Alliance for Austin Musicians, Kevin Michael Foster, who's on the AISD school board and chairs Black Studies at UT, Aaron Gurak, who is the district director for Lloyd Doggett. I have a really robust coalition of supporters, and I think it's a testament to the years I've put in here in District 9. So thank you so much.
Thank you to all of our candidates. What an amazing forum. I learned a lot. I honestly only know a few of you outside of this event, but I feel like I know all of you now. And I just want to thank all of you for having the courage to step up and to run for this office for District 9 on the Austin City Council. So thank you all so much. A couple reminders: if you go into the chat, you'll be able to see that there's a poll link in there. Please take a second to fill that out. We'd love to get your feedback on what you saw today. Additionally, quick reminder, we have additional forums coming up. The District 3 Candidate Forum is on August 17th, and the newly announced District 5 Forum will be on August 30th coming up. Again, I'm Brian Smith with Unified. I want to thank you again for participating in our District 9 Candidate Forum. And again, thanks to all of the candidates and for you for watching. We'll
Good
see
job,
you next
Brian.
Thanks.
Good job, bud. See you guys.
Thanks again for watching, everyone. Good night.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, y'all.